But when I was ending the chapter, or ending the book, sorry, one of the things that I did was I took it back to the beginning of Hardwiring Excellence book that Quint wrote. And Quint wrote a story about his nephew, Brian Fitzpatrick. And I kept that story in the conclusion. And Brian was a baseball player, and there's a couple of reasons why. One was because of the influence that the 9 principles had on me years ago when I sat at a TYYO and learned them for the first time. It changed me as a leader. And when Brian Fitzpatrick was a baseball player at University of Illinois, Chicago, UIC, he went overseas, came back, was so excited about his trip. And he was at his brother's house telling his brother about his trip. And the next morning he went home to his parents' house, and it was Christmas Eve, and he got into a car accident and passed away. This was Quint's nephew. And when Quint went to his funeral, the baseball players at the University of Illinois, Chicago, all had their baseball uniforms on and had their hats on, and they were the Flames, UIC Flames. They are the Flames. And they put Brian's baseball cap in the casket. And Quint basically carried that hat around with him, a hat, a flame, everywhere he went when he started Studer Group years ago. And he said, this is representative of Brian Fitzpatrick, because we're going to ignite the flame in healthcare. And I'm going to carry that with me. And Quint, in the work that he did years ago with me, ignited that flame as a leader in me. And so I carried that with me. And we carried that with us at Studer Education. It will never go away. The interesting part is 2 years ago, Gail, Juno, Butler, and I had an opportunity to work with University of Illinois, Chicago. And we're working with them today. Now, how many times does that happen? It's right. The work is right. The work is real, and the work is good. And so one of the things that we do each year is for organizations that have worked at least 5 years with us, a leader been in a position to work 5 years with us, we give at What's Right in Education, we give the Flame Award. And so we give the flame to our Difference Maker Award. And the award is in the shape of a flame. So if you could put up that slide. For the last 3 years, this just gives you a sense of who our flame winners, our Difference Maker Award winners have been, who've received the flame. And Mark Beelang, you're on this call today, I believe. I saw you. Yes, Mark is one of our Difference Maker Award winners for all the contributions and the work that he's made. And you can see how meaningful that is to us. Even when we were virtual, we were basically Dale and Faith as a board member. Faith is a chair of a school board member. Then we need Faiths of the world right now so much. But these are this you. It's you. You are the difference makers, and this is the way that we recognize you each year as we carry that tradition on. So as you go into your groups, you have some questions that are with you, but I really want you to think about, who are some of the difference makers? Who are the difference makers in your life, in your organizations, and what do they do? And how do they resemble the 9 principles that we talk about in Hardwiring Excellence in Education? So I'm gonna, as we have just a few more minutes, I was just gonna ask, would anybody like to share just a story about a difference maker that you've had in your organization, or somebody that you talked about? I'll open it up.
Okay,
Dennis?
my difference, this is Dennis. Difference maker is something, that question was really deep. And as I searched through it, the single most pivotal person was someone I chose. I didn't actually meet them, Stephen Covey, because he informed the way I processed my personal values and how I aligned myself with navigating life. And I recognize, even though I chose the principles or the teaching that he provided, that because I believe something doesn't necessarily make it universally right or applicable to everyone else. So essentially, I learned a lot from him, but I also learned that what I learned didn't mean much to anyone but myself.
That's good, Dennis. And so much of the work that we've talked about, that I talk about in Hardwiring Excellence and that we talk about, is so connected to Stephen Covey. I mean, there's so, I even have a something that I just wrote down in a connection with a meeting later on, just the keynote, the someone that keynoted at AASA, and just the call for, really the deep connection to people. And one thing that I think, that we've been able to do, all of you have been able to do, is build the how to. Like, what are the how to's to how we live, what Covey has taught us, all these years. So that's, if it's at some point, if we can continue to execute the tactical things that we're talking about in Hardwiring Excellence and education and things that you do, then we're living out, what we know is good practices that Covey has taught us all. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? One more?
I don't mind sharing, Janet.
Yeah,
If,
Mark.
and I shared something different with the team, with our group, because I've learned so many things from so many different people. They've each brought something to my life that I've needed at the time I needed it. But the one person that is really my flame is Marianne Houston. Marianne is a disciple of Parker Palmer, and does a lot of work with our teams around listening to our inner voice. And that was always hard for me to understand, that the answer resides within me. And we just have to go inside and take that inner journey to make sure that that voice comes out. So she's my flame. It's really the light that she brings to my life. And I'll forever be grateful to her for what she's done.
Thank you, Mark. And you have certainly modeled that with your team over and over again. Scott, I saw you raise your hand. Let's go ahead and take yours.
I was just going to say, I think one of the things that, even looking at student education, that brought us, to the table, was the whole culture. So my flame is Dr. Knost. And then you go back to Teddy Roosevelt, people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think the thing that we look at in any organization is trying to ensure that everybody does feel heard. And culture is one of the most important pieces that we have, because you can go down the track, things are going great. All it takes is a little bitty shift and it can derail in that train. So I think a constant understanding about where people are and what they know and what their voice is extremely important. So I just, when looking at student education and what they brought to us, it's really looking at that culture piece. And I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. I just appreciate all of you that have been connected to us all these sessions. Many of you have shown up time and time again. So again, thank you all. Thank you so much for the work that you do.